Welcome to In the News for September 29th, 2023. I am Brett Burney from appsandlaw.com.
And this is Jeff Richardson from iPhone JD. Hey, Brett.
Hi, Jeff. It is good to talk with you because you have had your brand new iPhone 15 Pro Max for exactly, well, maybe not, maybe an hour. Almost
pretty much exactly
a whole
1 week, though. That's right, because it was during our show last week that I got it. That's a good point.
Quickly, we just want to say thank you to our sponsors today, SaneBox. We'll talk a little bit more about them in just a moment, and even maybe some of the subscriptions that are available to you. But if you go to sanebox.com/inthenews, you can learn a little bit more. You, my friend, wrote a fantastic review on iPhone JD about the iPhone 15 Pro Max. And wow, there's so much I want to ask you about in here. But where would you like to start? Now that you've had a week to have this in your hand, and the pictures you've been taking have been amazing as well, Jeff.
Yeah, I mean, I guess the two things that jump out at me is, number one, if you're like me and you've never had the really, really big iPhone, this is a great year to make the jump, because with the titanium, it definitely weighs less. And, you know, you and I did the on-the-air test last week when I had both phones in my hand. And it was amazing to me that the big one seems to weigh less, even though it's technically weighs a little bit more. But from a hand feel standpoint, it seems to weigh less than the non-Max version of last year's phone, because of the switch from stainless steel to titanium. And so it's great. So if you're not getting a bigger phone, you're going to be thrilled with this year's phone because it's going to weigh less. And if you are changing sizes like I did, this is a great year to do it because it weighs less, and so you don't feel like you have something bigger. It's also technically a little bit smaller than last year's Max 2, but only in a very tiny amount. I mean, it's like a millimeter. It's very small.
Millimeter, right?
What you really notice, though, is the curved sides of it just feel great in the hand. So I love the new design of the iPhone, and if people make the upgrade, they're going to feel, you're going to feel like this is something new, which is nice. But the camera system is just the thing that, makes a big difference. We all know that the camera is the #1 use of the iPhone for so many people. And I've just been having so much fun with the camera. I
can see.
I've been taking test pictures. I was traveling to Washington, D.C. this week, so I was taking pictures of the Capitol and stuff like that. It's just, it's almost like there's two big things. There's the regular camera. If you're just going to take normal pictures, anywhere between a 1x to a 2x zoom range.
Right.
And I'll come back and talk about that in a second. It just takes fantastic pictures, better than ever. They're now 24 megapixel instead of 12 megapixels, so you've got more details. They're beautiful. And then the big thing, of course, is for this Pro Max that I got, if you really want to zoom in, this 5x zoom, this is the real deal, Brett. I mean, it really is. The picture that you're showing right now that I took from my office window. I mean,
the tugboat.
When I'm looking out my window, I'm looking at the Mississippi River, and I see a boat going by. There's no way in the world I could ever pick out the words on the side of the boat just using my eyes. And sometimes people that when they work in an office tower like I do, you might see they have like a telescope in the corner of their office, just so you can sort of look out and see something in the distance. But you basically have a telescope in your hands with the 5X. You can get so close and you can get so much detail that it truly blows my mind. And part of it is because of the lens being 5X, but I mean, Apple deserves a lot of credit because they have, when you zoom in that much, even if you try really hard to keep your hand still, you're going to shake a tiny bit, right? Unless you're using like a tripod or something.
Right.
But they have this incredible image stabilization. For the first time ever, Apple calls it a 3D image stabilization, because it's not just left, right, and up, down, but it's also back and forth. And so whatever little bit of jitteriness your hand may have, the lens seems to compensate just fine. And it wasn't that many years ago, Brett, when I was using Zoom on an iPhone, and when you zoomed in even just to 2x or 3x, let alone, it was so jittery, it might make you get a little nauseous. But now with the 5x, it just works great. So it's this whole new tool. I mean, whether you're using it for photography or whether you're just using it because you're sitting in a room and you want to see something. Like I was in the airport yesterday at Reagan National, and I wanted to see something all the way on the other side of the terminal. And I'm not going to get up because, you get up, you lose your seat in the airport. You're never going to find a seat again.
Right.
So I'm just using the telephoto lens to see all the way across. And I'm like, oh my goodness, I could totally read this. It's really, really, really fun.
This picture here. Yeah. This picture here, because you've done this before where you've done out of your office window, but I don't know, are you a mile away from the river or so? I mean, you got to be pretty far away, because you can see this first picture you took here is I can barely make out that's a tugboat. Then you go to what is a 2x zoom,
That's the
And
2x
like, okay,
zoom.
yeah, that's a boat with a whole pontoon or whatever that is pushing here. The 3x zoom, but then this picture here, Jeff, like the fact that at 5x you are reading as almost as clear as day the name of the boat. You know what I thought of? Do you remember that movie? What was with Will Smith? Was it Enemy of the State or something? You know, when they were like had the satellite images and they were like going down, they wanted to read the license plate on a car or something like that. That's what I thought of here, Jeff. Or maybe the Bourne conspiracy movies, right?
Yeah.
I'm like, wow, you actually have the ability now that you could zoom in literally if you're across the street or miles away from something, maybe you could actually read something this far away. And even this, you know, this lamp, this oil lamp that you said, or that you had a picture of, or the book, for crying out loud. That's an amazing feat that you're able to read the text, the little tiny text on that book as clear as you can at 5x there.
I've heard people refer to this as the CSI effect, because in the TV show CSI, you would often have a picture and they would zoom in. And of course, it's very blurry and pixelated. And then their computer, within like a second, would instantly make it clear.
Yeah,
and you're like,
clear that up.
In real life, it does not work that way. I know there's some sophisticated Photoshop-like tools that can do a tiny bit of that, but not nearly what you see on TV.
Wow.
But when you have a really good 5x lens, you can sort of do the same thing of zooming in and getting good pictures. So I think that people that get this phone, you know, that if you want the zoom lens, and again, if you never use a zoom, that's fine. But, you know, this is a 120 millimeter zoom. Think about like if you had an SLR camera with an 120 millimeter lens. I mean, that's not the biggest zoom lens that you might buy for a prosumer or a consumer, but it's, I mean, we're talking about many inches of lens. And somehow Apple is reproducing that just in you know, right here. It's really
I'm thinking of like at a sports game, right? You see those poor photographers on the sidelines that have, you know, like the lens is like half the length of actually the actual person. What if they just start using iPhones now on the sidelines?
It's funny you say the sports games, because, you know, right now my daughter's big sport is basketball, but it used to be for many years when she was younger, she used to play soccer. And when you're a parent on the side of a soccer fields are big. And so when your kid, you know, you might be close on one side, but when your kid is all the way on the other side of the field and you want to take a video of them, you know, you need to have an extreme zoom. And I never had it with my older iPhones. So like I have these videos of her shooting the goal, but like you can't really see it. And then you can crop the video, which is a pain to crop video anyway. But even if you use something like iMovie or Final Cut Pro, it's blurry. And again, it's fine. You know, I would have loved having these sorts of tools at my disposal way back when. And parents are going to love them now. But again, it's anything that you want to see something close, something you want a good view of something that's far away, it's 5x. So again, the 5x is the standout feature, but it's definitely worth mentioning. It's the number one thing you're going to mention. If you don't get the bigger phone, you get the 3x, which is the same as last year, which is nice. But I think that 5x, you know, if you want to zoom, you really want to zoom.
Now, so quickly, that we're talking pictures mostly, but does all of this apply to video as well?
All of it applies to video as well. Absolutely.
Wow.
So you get nicer, and you know, you have to be careful with 5x video, because even with the stabilization, it's hard to hold it because you know, video, the movement is sensed more. But the iPhone does a really good job with it, and I've been trying out some of it. And you know, you want to be more careful about how shaky your hands are even with the compensation. Or what you could use is Apple has the fantastic action mode for taking videos, where you lose
that's what I was thinking.
Images, you crop in a little bit, so you lose the far reaches of the edges of the screen. It's zoomed in a tiny bit more, but as a result, Apple compensates for the shakiness really well. So yes, you can take advantage of this, and it works really well. And again, the 5x camera, it's not as good as the regular 1x to 2x camera where you have the 48 megapixel, but it's still a 12 megapixel camera, which is still pretty good. And if you're like outside where you've got good light and stuff, or inside in a store that's got good overhead lighting, it's gonna be fine. It's gonna be fine.
Well, kudos to you for writing this up, because I got completely lost in your calculations. Swapping back and forth between 24 megapixel with the 1x, but then the 3x does a 48 megapixel but times 24 or something, and the 5x. I mean, you did a great job explaining it. I just have to go through and reread it again. But it's pretty amazing how Apple is kind of flip-flopping back, or, you know, they're kind of going around circle here and just making it work, because you're explaining why, you know, the 3x looks almost worse than the 1x in some cases here, like on this oil lamp that you're pointing to, but then the 5X is better. And anyway, you do a good job in there, so I wanted to let people know. Just go through and read it. If unless you're like me, you just like, I just want a good camera, and then just get the good camera. I know one of your commenters in the bottom, you convinced him to get the Pro Max here, just even for this. And darn it, if you aren't almost convincing me as well. I've gone the Max, but just we've talked about this before. I like the smaller size for the hand and everything. But man, Jeff, you are making a really good argument that you're comfortable moving up a little bit, even the fact that it fits in your shirt pocket.
Yeah,
which is very important. That's very important.
Yeah, it doesn't fit as well. There's no question. It's, when I was wearing a suit in court the other day, it's a little bit bigger. It's bigger in the hand. I thought I would dislike the size a lot more. Do I notice it? Yeah. It's a week later. I'm still noticing that I have a bigger phone in a way that I would prefer it was not. I would prefer it was a little bit smaller, but I can't say that it's so obnoxious that I don't think I'm going to get used to it soon. And you know what it reminds me of, Brett? Gosh, it's been so many years now, but when I moved from the regular size iPad to the iPad Pro 12.9 inch.
12.9,
when I first had it, I think when I wrote my review, gosh, what is it, 10 years ago, a long time ago, I think I called it like a cafeteria tray. It's like, this is so big. And then, after 2 weeks, I totally stopped noticing it. And nowadays, the iPad that I have sitting right here next to me, this to me is the correct size for an iPad. And if I pick up a quote unquote normal size iPad, like my wife's iPad, I'm like, oh, you're so small. How cute you are. And I really think that in a few weeks, I'm going to be in the same place with this phone. I'm no longer going to notice the size difference. The weight difference is not an issue because of the titanium. And I think I'm just going to be used to it. And so, it's been really great.
Well, real quick before we move off the photos, a couple of other resources that you mentioned. I want to jump ahead real quick. Here is another podcast. It's The Talk Show, which features John Gruber from Daring Fireball. And I haven't had a chance to listen to it yet, but you say it is absolutely fantastic because he's talking with Matthew Panzarino. Yeah, I love the name of their podcast, Who's Heef? Referencing like the HEIF, format, right? Anyway, it sounds like that's a great podcast to listen to. And then you also linked to Jason Snell's Take Control of Photos book. The Take Control books have always been fantastic for years and years and years. And I did not realize actually that Jason Snell authored this particular book, Take Control of Photos, but apparently he's already updated it for iOS 17 and everything. So that looks like it's another great book as well.
Yeah, there's two things you mentioned. If you want to get deep on the photography aspects of the iPhone 15 Pro, the podcast that you just mentioned, The Talk Show with John Gruber and Matthew Panzarino, it's really great. It's totally geeky. They get super deep into it. Both of them really know what they're talking about, and it's just a delight to listen to. The other extreme, this book that Jason Snell has, and I just read it this past weekend. He's been updating this book for years and years. It's the full gamut. If you're looking to give your mom or dad, if your mom or dad says, you know what, I'm not a very techie person, but I just want to be able to do more with the photos on my iPhone or iPad or Mac, give them this ebook and it explains it. Having said that, I consider myself a little bit more of a pro person. When I read the book, I just sort of skimmed it because it was an update to the version I'd read in the past. I learned all sorts of details in here that I just did not know about. And I'm like, oh, wow, Jason. Just to pick one that jumped out at me, I didn't realize that if you have how if you have a specific photo and you want to change the location that the photo was taken, maybe you took it with another camera and it doesn't have location data, or maybe you just want to adjust to what your iPhone was because for some reason it was off. You can do that on a picture by picture basis. Likewise, if you wanted to, and this part I've always known, and likewise, if you wanted to adjust not only location, but some other aspects too, you can do it in a picture by picture basis. I did not know until I saw Jason mentioning it here that you can actually select multiple photos. And then I think you use the share button and you can adjust it all at once. For years now, I've used a third-party app called Metafo, which we've talked about before on this podcast, which I love for doing that because it does a really good job of it. I just never realized somewhere along the line, Apple took a feature that used to require a third-party app and put it into Photos. And that's just an example. When you go through his book, you'll see little details that it's written for a general audience. Don't get me wrong, but he's got some pretty advanced features he describes in here. So anyway, whether you want to listen to a podcast for truly geeky things or whether you want a good general interest, those are both good.
Okay, still on the camera, because I think these are iCameras now that actually can also make phone calls. That's pretty much what we're saying
No
today.
joke.
But
No joke.
one other link that you had today was from Gadget Hacks, and it's 18 new features that are hiding in your iPhone's camera app on iOS 17. So I still have a 14 Pro, haven't upgraded yet. But any of the tips in here, in fact, the first one here was your tip from last week, right?
Yeah.
This little, what do you call it? I don't even know if it's a level necessarily, but it's like a little line here that I turned on last week because of you. And I loved having it this past week when I was taking pictures, Jeff. Line up your shot with the horizon. I thought that was really good. But there's a few other tips in here that I thought were really, nice that I wanted to try. This is specifically iOS 17. So even if you don't have the 15 yet, you can still take advantage of some of these tips in here as well. These were really good.
Yeah. If you do, however, have the new phone, at least the new Pro version of the phone, they point out, using the action button. And, I should mention that I actually really like the action button on the on the iPhone 15 Pro and Pro Max. What used to be your mute switch is now a button. And when you hold down the button, you can change what happens to it. And I've had it set to my camera for the last week, Brett, and I really like it. Yeah, it works great because you can just jump to the camera so quickly. I know there's other ways to get to the camera, but having a physical button that you know where it is, it just works really well. And so, they mentioned that in here too, and I like that too. A lot of the other tips that they have here get into the super advanced things that I'm not going to do, like shooting ProRes and all these other shooting in RAW and everything else.
Right.
So, in fact, which reminds me,
there.
there was a quote that I pulled it out in my post today. And it was from that podcast that we were just talking about from John Gruber. John mentions that when you have a traditional camera, you are the photographer. You control the aperture and the settings and the blues. You're the ones, if you really know what you're doing, you're going to get a great picture. But with the iPhone, any of the modern iPhones, it's like the iPhone is the photographer. It knows how to take the best picture. It will adjust it so that the HDR is perfect. It will adjust it so that the focal, it makes those decisions so that you just concentrate on what do you want to take a picture of, and the iPhone does the rest. And that's the type of photographer that I am. For the years and years that I used a DSLR camera, Brett, I didn't know what I was doing half the time. I used it as a point and click, and every once in a while I would fiddle around with some things and change some. But I had no idea what I was doing with that thing. Yeah, exactly. Whereas, and I know that a professional photographer could use the same equipment that I was using and produce a much better picture. But I just wanted to take good pictures and make it real simple. And with the iPhone, that's what I love about it is yes, it's got these fiddly things if you want to get into it, but you don't have to. You can just take a picture and it's going to be great.
For all of the fantastic reactions we have seen about the new iPhones, here are the criticisms about the new iPhone cases. So you have one. I didn't really know this was a thing until maybe about a couple of days ago, Jeff. All of a sudden I started seeing stuff in my blog feeds, and I'm like, okay, I remember Apple had that whole Mother Nature little vignette that they did, like, hey, we're getting away from things that we believe are harmful to the environment. And one of those things was leather. In place of the leather iPhone cases, they offer now the FineWoven cases. And I thought at the time, which was, a few weeks ago, right? When Apple announced this, I'm like, okay, well, I've seen Apple do plastic cases and rubber cases and silicone cases and very beautiful cases. Surely this is just going to be another fantastic offering from Apple. Little did we know that, some people do not like these. In fact, I think I heard one podcaster, it was Micah Sargent, right, was saying that, he doesn't like, it's almost like how people don't like to see fingernails on a chalkboard. Oh. People don't like the look and feel, or I guess the feel more than anything, of these new cases. But you have one as well, Jeff, right? How do you see it, sir?
So I think it's sort of like, to a certain extent, I understand what people are saying. I also think it's a certain degree of the scandal of the week, and then move on to something later. But I will say this, if I have the leather case, because I used to buy Apple's leather cases every single year.
I remember.
And if I have the leather case in one hand and the FineWoven in the other hand, the FineWoven doesn't feel as good. It just doesn't. I mean, leather feels better. There's no question about it. Even if you scratch leather or if it gets worn, how leather sort of takes on character. Like
Yeah,
it
patina.
and almost, yeah, exactly. It sort of adds to it over time. And this FineWoven thing, it's not as nice. And so if
Okay.
Apple had charged $20 less for this, I would have felt, okay, well,
Yeah,
that's
yeah,
fine. This is a little bit
exactly.
cheaper. It's
That's what
not
I
as
thought.
nice, but it's better for the environment. But Apple charges the same amount for them as the leather case. And
Mm,
it's not quite as good. Just it doesn't feel as the quality doesn't feel as good in your hand.
right.
Having said that, it's also fine. You know, I I
Okay,
I'm one
good.
of these people that I don't use a case a lot. And some people are like, oh, how could you not use a case? Well, I just try to be safe with my phone. But there are
Yeah,
times like when I
yeah.
was traveling to this week to Washington, D.C., you're in an airport, you're taking your phone out a lot and stuff. I didn't want to drop my phone. And so I had this case on the whole time. And it did what I wanted to do. It stopped. It gave me a little bit more grippiness, so I wasn't going to
Hmm.
drop my phone, and it gave
Right.
it a little bit more protection. One thing I do like about the Apple case is that they actually have real, but this is just like the leather case. It's not like a cutout. They actually have real plasticky sort of
Okay.
buttons on the side here that push through. So I mean, it's a decent case, but I will admit that feeling the fine woven, it's sort of
Mm.
soft. I mean, I don't even know exactly what it was. You were showing before the iFixit folks that have these extreme microscopes that like got
Yeah,
super
they
super
do.
refined in. It's
Uh-huh.
some sort of I mean, that picture is bizarre, Brett, because that black line you're looking at,
Exactly.
that is a hair. That is a single a
Like
strand
a
of
human
hair,
hair.
a human hair, which in this picture looks like it is, a two by
Looks
four.
huge.
Um,
Yeah.
but so that's extreme.
490 time magnification there
That
is
is
what
that is
they're
a
saying.
lot of
The
that's a
iPhone
big
can't do
microscope
that
there.
yet.
Not quite yet. We don't have that lens quite yet.
Not yet.
Uh,
Okay.
the optical stabilization you would need for that would be crazy. Um,
Right.
it's some sort of recycled material that's woven together, and it
Uh-huh.
feels. I've heard some people say it feels like plastic. I don't know. It feels like something.
Well, even the iFixit here, they compare it to the FineWoven is on the left. Here they have an Arc'teryx jacket, like like
Mhm,
a Patagonia type of jacket. Oh, no, there's a
mhm.
Patagonia jacket has a bigger, looser weave. I mean, they look extremely similar, like what you would
Yeah,
get like a puffy jacket.
yeah.
is what they're compared it to. Now, that's again magnified 440 times. But then they even go so far as to like try to scratch it. I mean, they're putting hot sauce on it
Yeah, now
to
I have
see if
heard
it would.
this that if you're having like a piece of pizza with all that, oil and grease on it, and then
Right?
you take your hands without wiping them and you touch the back of your phone, you're going to stain your phone. Although I think you do the same thing with
Yeah,
the leather case too. Maybe it soaks in
true.
more here. I don't know. So I mean, the bottom line is, look, this is not as nice as Apple's previous leather cases. If you want a leather case, and you don't care about the environmental effects of it,
Yeah,
go
you're
ahead
gonna.
and go to a
Yeah,
third party case. On the other
yeah.
hand, it's a fine case. It fits the iPhone perfectly. Yeah,
Okay.
it's not as nice as what I used to use, but it does the job. And it
Yeah,
was Apple's first effort out of the gate to move away from leather. They don't get everything right in the first try. Maybe in a
right.
year or two they'll find a way to make it better somehow. But it's fine.
Yeah.
But I
I
totally
guess I.
understand why people are upset because it's not as nice as what they had before.
I
But
guess.
it's
Yeah.
whatever.
They have other cases though, Jeff. I guess I just
They
don't
do.
understand why Apple felt like that they needed to come up with some kind of a new, fine woven. I mean, it sounds fine, but I don't know why they felt like they needed to come up with something because they have other silicone cases, they have other cases. They could have just stopped doing leather and maybe not try to
Well,
replace it
I
or
mean, the
something.
answer
I
to
don't
that,
know.
Brett, is that the leather cases are always more expensive, right? These are $60 cases
That's true.
versus
That's what it comes down to.
the other ones that you're talking about are what, like $30 cases. And
Right, right,
Apple
right, right.
knows that they can make more money when they sell the iPhone if they sell you a case. The third parties, they don't know for sure what the size of the new phones are going to be until Apple announces
True.
them. Whereas Apple has all this lead time that it knows exactly what it's coming out with. So, Apple, they make money. It's a fine case, and they want to sell something at $60, and this is what they came up with. So.
Well, somebody else may be making a few more bucks this year, right? That are
Hmm.
making leather
Hmm.
cases because if Apple doesn't offer them, there will be, even if they have to catch up, there are definitely other cases that are going to come out that are going to be full on leather, right?
Hmm.
So if you really
Hmm.
want to go that route, you'll be able to find one. Okay, you mentioned the action button, and I wanted to come back to that quickly because I haven't even felt it yet. Can I first ask you, have you noticed that you press it too long or not long enough? Like, have you been able to adjust to that, in the way that you press it on the side? It comes up just fine, it sounds like.
Yeah, like the very first day that you use the action button, uh, when you first press it, you won't press it in enough. And it's right there on the screen. As soon as I press it really short, it says hold to open. And so it's sort of giving me feedback that I need to hold it a tiny bit more. And then once you learn it, every single time since then, I've had no trouble. I mean, it's not like you're pressing down the action button for 2 seconds. You're pressing it down for a fraction of a second, just a tiny bit longer than you would than a quick press. But no, you very quickly learn how easy it is to use. And I had no problem at all.
So I've heard many people talk about this because apparently in the setup there, what Apple offers, like 5 or 6 different, defaults, right? Like camera, I guess, or mute. You can keep it as a mute button, or flashlight, or something like that. But obviously we know a lot of, or we follow a lot of techie, nerdy people that have said, oh my goodness, now we can customize what the action button can do. And I know that people have attributed shortcuts to that action button, which is great that Apple allowed that. But not until you link to this today that I see that Federico at MacStories, you can assign 2 shortcuts to the same action button. Now, is this like a little thing that he created himself? Or, he's doing some hackery on the back end with shortcuts, but he's masterful at doing this.
Yeah, I mean, it's just, you can assign the action button to open up a shortcut, any shortcut you create. And so he created a shortcut that basically, the first time you trigger the shortcut, it does one thing. The second time you trigger the shortcut, it does the second thing. The third time it goes back to the first thing. The fourth time it goes to the second thing. And so just with that simple little back and forth, he makes it so that if you basically trigger the button twice in succession, it will do the second thing, not the first thing. So he's found a way to do 2 different things with the same button. I haven't tried this shortcut yet, but I think it's fascinating. And one that's just as fascinating that was, again, mentioned in that podcast from John Gruber, and it's also mentioned on the Daring Fireball site, is he came up with a quick shortcut that I think John Gruber linked to it in his review of the iPhone 15 Pro. But what his shortcut does is if your iPhone is in any position at all and you press the action button, it goes to the camera, except for one. If your iPhone is face down, as if it's face down on a table, or if you're holding it with the face like this way, because you can, from the gyroscope, the iPhone can tell what position it's in. It can tell. If your iPhone is in this position and you press the action button, it will do the mute switch, just like the old style mute switch. And I'm like, well, that's sort of interesting. It's a little complicated, but it just shows that because of the shortcut that he created, that it knows if it's in this position, do X, if it's in that position, do Y. I haven't yet tried these yet, but I am going to soon. There's just been too many other features I've been trying out on the phone. I know. And I love, once you connect any button to shortcuts, the world is your oyster. You could do anything. Right. And so, just within the first week, people have come up with these creative ideas. Who knows what we're going to have weeks, months from now. I think it's awesome. I'm very excited about this. It's totally geeky, but that's who I am. So.
So I know we're going to keep on talking about the new iPhones. However, even if you have an older iPhone, you hopefully by now, maybe, or maybe not, it's okay, have upgraded to iOS 17, right? That came out last Monday. I have been loving the new features in iOS 17. In fact, I can't think of anything specifically that, I'm not happy with. You had a great link here today from CNET about 17 hidden iOS 17 features and settings on your phone. I only wish this article would have gone into a little bit more detail on like how to enable some of these, but this was really good. A couple of these I did not know that you could do. For example, the visual lookup options here. I think there was an app that I either used as one of my tips, was called like I forget the name of it, but it was basically an app that you could open up and you could point it at a label on your clothes. Because there's all kinds of little, I didn't even know, there's all kinds of little laundry codes that come on your clothes label, and I've just never cared or paid attention to it. But this app would tell me what this means, like if it's cold cycle or whatever. Well, now that's all built in iOS 17. Like you could just point your phone at it. Not only that, the other one here is pointed at your car dashboard, and it'll tell you what the lights mean that come on the dashboard. Are you kidding me? I didn't
even realize that those were uniform, but I guess they are. I guess those are uniform little icons. I never even realized that. Wow.
That's exactly what I thought of the first time, Jeff. I'm like, okay, do I have to put in my car's make and model in order to like get the exact? But anyway, this was a great little article. I'm glad you linked to it because some of these I knew, and some of the others were just like, really? I did not know that was available in there.
Agreed.
Yeah, very good stuff. Okay, we talked about the AirPods Pro last time and the new AirPods Pro V2 USB-C edition, which is different than the AirPods Pro V2 Lightning edition.
Exactly.
Right?
You did
That's
it
really
right.
the
Yeah,
only
that's
thing.
right.
That's the only thing that was different in sort of the hardware. There's a couple of other things with the way that they're doing some of the audio, and I think even some of the dust resistance that you can get in the brand new version 2 AirPods Pro. But this was a good article from TechCrunch that I thought did a good job of talking about some of the features we talked about last week too: adaptive audio, personalized volume, and conversational awareness. How have you fared this past week in using these, Jeff? Because when you're traveling, I find that's when I really use these features a little bit more.
Yeah, and it's actually sort of neat because the brand new in between feature, in between mode that I'm still forgetting the name of.
Yeah,
Thank you.
adaptive audio. Yeah.
I had. It's interesting. I was on an airplane, and you know how you have the white noise, but airplanes are notoriously loud, and so if I go into complete noise cancellation mode, it tries to cut that out as much as possible.
The whole thing.
But even when you go to the adaptive mode, this brand new mode, it still cut out most of it, but made it so that at least I could hear the announcement that the flight attendants or that the pilot was making over the plane.
Right.
And I thought that was actually sort of interesting. Of course, in any mode that you're in, if your AirPods sense that somebody is talking to you, if it's loud enough, it will actually lower the volume of what you're listening to so that you could hear them too. So that's sort of a cool feature too. It's neat. One of the things that I loved about this article the most is whenever you interview Apple executives, it's sometimes they go beyond just the marketing speak to actually tell you something interesting.
Give you some details.
And here, they were describing how when they were trying to figure out what to do to come up with these new modes for AirPods, they explored all sorts of options. I mean, one of the things they described here is they said they explored, what if we look at your GPS location so that if you're at your home, we'll do these things, but if you're out in the world on the street, we'll do other things. And they ultimately did not act upon that because they said, just because you're home, it could be a very noisy home, and just because you're outside, it could be a very quiet outside if you're in the park. So, but at least it just shows that these are the sorts of things that they looked into to see if it would make sense to take this into account for a feature for the AirPods Pro. So I thought that was actually sort of interesting.
Not only that, the article was just, the number of calculations that apparently are being made inside these little tiny AirPods all the time, to like balance out the noise from the outside, the noise from the inside, to understand if you're like actually talking yourself from that conversational mode. I mean, there was one place in here that were saying there's actually a microphone inside the AirPods to kind of listen. What was it? It was listening to the noise even on the inside of your ears to understand the volume that you're listening to music on. I mean, there's so much going on inside these little AirPods that I think I just take for granted now because I am really enjoying the adaptive audio. I mean, I always love the transparency versus the noise cancellation. And sometimes I will go back and forth between those two extremes, Jeff. But exactly what you're talking about. I love having the adaptive audio so that it does at least close out a lot of some of the extraneous noise, but exactly the same thing you did. When I get on a plane, I like to have that so I can talk to the flight attendant, or I can hear if the pilot comes over and has an announcement, but I still cut out the vast majority of that crazy loud noise. I did not realize how loud airplanes were. So I've been loving these new things. It's just getting used to it a little bit. That conversational awareness. Apparently, the AirPods even look to see if your jaw is moving to know that if you're starting to talk in that aspect. I got to tell you, sometimes that will trip me up because I get annoyed. I think I said this last time. I'm listening to music and either I just sing out loud or I just, I'm by myself. I was running a trail last week and I just exclaimed like, yes, I can do it or something like that. Right. And the music went away and I'm like, no. I need the music. I want to keep pumping myself up. So sometimes I might want to turn that off, but for the most part, I do like having it on. Yeah. Good stuff there. AirPods. Speaking of travel, one of the places that I went this past week myself was Arizona. And while I was there, one of my friends, we were talking about that they had just moved. And so they were talking about changing their license from the old state to the new state. And since we were in Arizona, my friend said, oh yeah, I'm thinking about getting the digital version of the license. And I looked and my eyes went, oh yeah, Arizona is one of the states that allow you to actually have your driver's license in your Apple wallet. this was a good story. I'm glad that you linked to this because the 9 to 5 Zach Hall at 9 to 5 Mac will update this. Apparently, it's updated for September 2023, and this is good to know that there's Apple Wallet IDs, and then some states, I believe, like Louisiana, will allow a digital ID app because you've been using that for a while too, Jeff.
Yeah, and it's really nice. I mean, it's nice to not have to worry about having my license with me when I drive. I normally do, but I don't have to. I used it just this week when I was at I was asking for something when I was at my hotel, and she asked for my driver's license, and I realized that I had run downstairs like I didn't even pick up my wallet. You know, I had nothing but my room key and my iPhone, and so I just brought up my ID, my Louisiana driver's license on my phone, and I guess for her purposes that was official enough. And she was like, okay, she could see I was who I was, and you know that then could change something about my room and stuff like that. So it's just nice having a digital ID with you all the time. What I have not yet tried is I know that more and more airports, you know, we're getting to the point that when you travel, you don't have to always show the TSA people your boarding pass, whether it's digital or analog. Usually they're getting to the point where you just show them your ID and they know who you are. And they know what we're playing, and that's all that you need. And I see this article was pointing out, in fact, it points out that it was at the airport that I was at this week. I didn't even know it, that many airports will now take these digital IDs instead of your physical ID, which is nice because you're often you have your phone in your hand anyway, and so you could just show them the digital ID in your phone. So it's a shame that it's taking a while for this to become a thing. But it is rolling out more and more over time, and you know, this is going to be one of these things that 5-10 years from now, I'm hoping everybody in the country can use a digital ID.
So 4 states so far do Apple Wallet IDs, which apparently means that you can actually incorporate your identification into Apple Wallet, and Arizona is one of them. But then I love how Zach Hall in the article here says there's digital ID apps. So in Louisiana, you can't put your ID into your Apple Wallet, right, Jeff? You have to pull up a specific app from Louisiana to show your driver's license. Okay, so there's a few more of those on there, but I want it all incorporated into the wallet because it
would be nicer if it was all in one app, because that's where your boarding passes are. That's where everything else is.
Exactly.
But you know what? It's really not that big of a deal to open up a separate app.
Yeah, that's true. Okay.
So, you know, it's easy enough.
I want more though. I do because sometimes when I go through TSA, just to your point, like I'll do a clear check, right? And I used to have to scan the boarding pass there. And then every once in a while, of course, you know, I'm flagged as like, okay, you know, you're randomly selected to show your ID. And I'm like, oh, I got to get my ID out of my bag, like the physical card. I'm like, come on, I'm in Ohio. I like how Zach says it's at the bottom. Like if your state doesn't have it, it's got to go through, the legislative body. So I'm thinking, should I write my state congressman? Do I need to do that? Like, let's get going, Ohio. Come on. Let's make something happen. I'm glad Louisiana has it, but you're right. I want it to roll out a little bit quicker on there. Well, we're still in the travel aspect here. So one last article that you linked to, which I just thought was really great. John Voorhees at MacStories, which I love reading. I was just on a plane, and if you're in economy, you know how teeny tiny those little desks are. And you cannot even do a laptop. I would even say sometimes I'll make a laptop fit, Jeff, but I am constantly nervous that the person in front of me is going to recline in a snap. And what happens? My laptop screen will snap because it'll get caught sometimes in there. And I'm constantly nervous that that's going to happen. John Voorhees is brilliant. I love this little trick that he came up with using the iPad mini.
Yeah, you don't even have to read the article. Just look at the picture. And
I know. That's the article. That says it all.
You know, he's describing a plane that has a ledge on the back of the seat in front of you for you to put your phone on, which I have to admit, I've actually never seen that before. I don't know what airline
I
it was
have.
on.
This is
I've never
Southwest,
seen that.
I think. Yeah.
Southwest.
Yeah.
And he noticed that not only would an iPhone fit in that little platform ledge, but an iPad mini, because it's so small, it also fits on the ledge too. So he put his iPad mini up there and then just has a keyboard. But it's a cute little setup.
I'm sorry, he says it's American Airlines. It looks to me like
American.
But I have seen these little trays here because, you know, it's like, yeah, come on, airlines, catch up. It's like, you know, that's what we're going to have. We have a phone, and a lot of times do I put it in my lap? And I got to tell you, almost every time that I get on a plane, I hear the sound almost every time, Jeff. I can tell immediately somebody dropped their phone. Like it sounds like, you know, there's like clunking around down in the cargo hold, but no, I can tell the sound immediately now that somebody dropped their phone. And it's like, I love it. You know, instead of like putting it into the seat back pocket or something like that, I want to have a little place where I can set my phone. And I'm glad that some airlines do this. But yeah, thanks, John. That's a wonderful little tip there. It is a sad day that we have to say goodbye to something that many of us have known and held near and dear to our hearts for many years, Jeff. Apparently, Netflix is going to stop sending the red envelopes of DVDs. This is a fun story you linked to today from the New
25
York Times.
years that Netflix has been doing this, which is, I'm certainly of an age. I know that you are too, Brett, that, we remember, when in college, we used to all hop in the car and go to the Blockbuster and have to pick out something.
Oh yeah.
But it was such a transformation when Netflix came around 25 years ago, and you could have the DVDs delivered directly to your house, and it's always so excited when you got the red envelope. You're like, oh, I wonder what I got today. And so it's obviously run its course. Netflix is obviously now a digital streaming company, but today is the last day that they're shipping out DVDs if you're still a member of the service.
Incredible.
And in fact, to get rid of their supply, I think everybody that's still a member, they're just shipping like 10 DVD, just 10 random movies. So just so you know, they don't need them anymore.
Here you go.
So people are getting all sorts of movies that maybe you'll enjoy.
Seriously.
This New York Times article though is great though, because they talk about the when the Netflix was at its peak, they had so many of these distribution centers, and you can get to the point where, depending upon where you were living, you would often get a movie like the next day, which is pretty amazing. There was a time period when Netflix's DVDs were some major percentage of the US Postal Office total circulation or whatever. And so anyway, we're no longer at those days, but we can all look back fondly and remember when Netflix DVDs were a big thing, and it was fun. It's the end of an era now, but a lot of fond memories there.
This story is so great in the sense, I mean, they really do a little profile of some of the workers there that have been there for like 10 or 13 years, and they're sad too. I mean, really, that's what I like it when stories kind of profile, the actual individuals that are there. But in fact, I got to tell you quickly, I was just talking with another friend yesterday, and I still didn't even know that Netflix was still sending these out, to be honest with you. But this friend of mine says, yes, they just got the notice that they are no longer getting, I think they were getting maybe 2 DVDs a month still, or whatever it was, right? They had just not completely switched over to the streaming, and they still had that excitement when the red envelope came in the mail, and it was, what did I get? I remember those days, Jeff. But and
the thing is, Netflix's collection was huge. Like the number of movies that Netflix had available for DVD is far beyond what you can get from streaming services nowadays. A movie may as long as a DVD was made, even if it's something that was now out of print, you could often get it on Netflix. Whereas there are times nowadays that, like, I might want to watch a movie with my son that I remember from years ago, and you look, you just can't find it. You go to these, you type in a movie title on Google, and they'll show you the services.
Where can I watch
it? And it's like, and the answer is nowhere. I can buy it for
or rent it,
or maybe. Sometimes
yeah.
you can rent it, but I'm like, I don't want to buy it or rent it. I just want to. I've already paid for all these streaming services. One of them have the darn movie. But Netflix would pretty much always have stuff. So
that's great. Well, farewell, red envelope. It was a good journey while it lasted.
It was.
Before we get to the In the Know segment, let us just talk briefly about SaneBox. We thank them for being a sponsor for us today. We have talked about them for several times, and I think I sort of beaten that insane horse already, in the sense that I can't do without it. Like, it's just now become part and parcel of my workflow when I check my email. And I'm even to the point where I'm considering, I've got 4 or 5 other accounts, Jeff, that it's like when I go to those accounts, I get annoyed. Like, wait a minute. I don't want to have to parse through all of this junk. SaneBox is a service that you can go and get some more information about. SaneBox.com/in-the-news, SANE box.com/in-the-news. If you go there and use that URL, you can get a free trial, so you can try it out. And in fact, some people say, well, I don't want anything messing up with my email. It's not going to do anything. It creates a couple of additional folders, but as you probably have heard us talk about over and over again, these folders help that it kind of automatically sorts out some of your email. We've talked about the Sane Black Hole. We've talked about the Sane Later. The Sane News is my favorite folder still, and that it just takes all of those newsletters and puts them in one folder that doesn't delete them, doesn't do anything with them. It just puts them in a place where I can go and look at them, maybe one time a day, as opposed to me checking my mail multiple times a day. And all of those, that junk is sort of kind of, slotted over to a different folder that I can look at later. How about we talk about today, maybe just some helping folks understand like the different options that you could get a subscription for, because not only can you get a free trial of SaneBox if you go to sanebox.com/in-the-news, but you get $25 off a subscription once you realize you can't do without it. and you need to actually get a subscription here. And I love how SaneBox offers these different options here, Jeff. You can get a snack subscription, you can get lunch, or you can get the full dinner. And the difference here mostly is the number of features that you can select to be included with your subscription.
Yeah, so like if you just want to, if you want to try it out, you can try it out for free for 14 days. But then once you actually go to subscribe,
Right.
if you do the snack version, which is $7 a month when you pay annually. And so for $7 a month, what you get to pick is only works with one email account. And then you just pick 2 features. So let's say, for example, I think the top 2 features would be the black hole feature to get rid of a bunch of nonsense, and maybe the same news feature that you were raving about so much. And then you just pick those 2. But then if you want to get the medium plan, the what is it, the dinner plan, what is it? The lunch plan, and this is the one that I use. So it works for 2 email accounts. So I have it for my Gmail and I have it for my iPhone JD, and you can choose which 6 features, and they can be different features on different accounts, which ones you want. So for me, 2 features would be a little limited because I like too many of the features. I like having the same black hole. I like having sane later. There's a feature like, for example, I think it's called sane no reply, that if you send an email, so I send you an email, Brett, and I initiated the email. It's a brand new email. I sent it to you and you didn't respond to it. SaneBox is not looking at the content of the message, but it's just saying, because it was a brand new email that I initiated to you, and because you never responded to it, it will say, I'm going to put a copy of this in this folder, so that later on this week, I can just look and I can say, here's all of my emails I sent out that I did not get a response to. Now, some of them don't require a response, so that's fine. But if one of them should have had a response and I see that, I'm like, you know what? I'm glad that you reminded me of that, because I actually did want Brett to respond to me on that. And so that's just another, there's I don't know, 15 different features that they have. So for me, I've picked the 6 that I want, and that works great for me. And so that's why I like the lunch plan. But then if you want to have the full plan that has everything, you can get for the more expensive one too. But I like the idea that you decide how much help do you want, and choose a plan that fits you. For me, the middle of the road lunch, sort of the Goldilocks. It's not too big, it's not too small, it's just right. That's the one that I prefer.
I do like the fact that it is customizable, right? In other words, I'm not forced to go to the highest end subscription, Jeff, just because like I want that one feature, right? That I can only get if I pay the full, like they've done a very good job here of balancing, in just the sense in that you can basically make the plan that's going to work best for you by picking the right features. And you're right, this lunch plan, number one, I got to have at least 2 email accounts. And I just really appreciate the fact that I have these 6 features that I can select from. And if you want all the features and you want to just try everything, you can go to the dinner route, the full dinner, or as my mom in the South used to say, supper, right? You could get everything. All the features are included there. And that has 4 email accounts that will apply to. And
did you see that they also have the appetizer plan?
I did see that, and that's only 7 cents a day. Now, that's 1 email account and 1 feature. Hey, if you want to start with that, that's fine, because what I also like about this is, number one, you can always upgrade or downgrade, even if you need to, although I don't see that you would be doing that. And number 2, the other great thing is there's no obligation. Like if you try it for a while, and if by some reason something is wrong with you, that you want to cancel it, you can do that. Like I always appreciate companies that just don't lock you into something, right? And you can cancel it any time, which is just really great. But yeah, just having the ability that you can, if you want to do the appetizer plan, you can do that if you just want to start somewhere. But even just going for that 14-day trial is great. And if you just go to sanebox.com/in-the-news, all one word, you can just sign up quickly. You can even get started right there. The buttons have you, start on your Google account or your iCloud account or any email address. You'll have to put in some of that information there so that it can just access, the fact that it's like, what are newsletters? Like, it looks into it. But you and I have both kind of looked at this intently, vetted it in the sense of security, and completely comfortable with what they're doing on here, which is really great on there. So sanebox.com/in-the-news. And now, in the know.
In the
Let's talk.
know.
So I just had upgraded my iPhone and my iPad to iOS 17 a week ago, just like we talked about before. And one of the things that I have been enjoying on my iPhone for quite a while, Jeff, where this was maybe at least a year ago, maybe 2 years ago, where I would do that lock screen and add widgets on my iPhone. And it wasn't until finally tonight, last night, that I opened my iPad and thought, oh, wait a minute, I can customize my lock screen and add widgets on my iPad. So I just wanted to remind everybody that you can do that now. I want to say I wasted about an hour last night, but no, it was an enjoyable time that I sat there and created all kinds of additional new pictures, some of the animations, and added widgets on my iPad. The thing that struck me out so much, because I've really enjoyed the different lock screens you can create on the iPhone. The iPad, of course, is just such a much bigger palette, right? I mean, I can see the picture even grander. I mean, almost too big sometimes. I had a picture of one of my kids and I'm like, yo, that's a little too big on the screen there. But I really just enjoy and appreciate the fact that you can just go in and create these widgets. Now, if I'm not mistaken, Jeff, I don't think the widgets on the lock screen on the iPad are interactive yet. They might be. I got to tell you, I don't know if I fully tested that, but I just love being able to tap the screen and I can immediately see like the battery levels of my AirPods or my phone or the actual battery level of the iPad. I love having that little calendar app on there just because I like to see like, okay, what's the 14th? Is that a Tuesday or a Thursday? Something along those lines. Just being able to have access to those widgets on the lock screen on my iPad it was just really, really useful. So if you haven't done that yet, just simply because, hasn't been that obvious because we've been doing it on the iPhone for so long, try adding the widgets on your iPad lock screen and you can customize that thing. Similar to the way you've been able to customize on the iPhone, you can now customize the lock screen on your iPad. And that's my tip for the day.
Yeah, I haven't played around with it yet, mainly because my iPad screen doesn't stay on all the time, unlike my iPhone screen. So
Good
I
point.
find a widget on the iPhone screen that's persistent to be so much more useful in the standby mode. But regardless, it's
standby
cool
mode,
there.
Right.
And I haven't tried it out yet, so I don't know all the details, but I do know that it's something that's there.
Good.
The tip that I was going to share today, it goes back to another photography tip, and it's a photography tip for when you're using the brand new phones. If you have the Pro version of the iPhone 15, I have the Pro Max, but I think it also works with the Pro. If you zoom, we talked before, Brett, about how the new telephoto lens is 5x zoom. But what if you want to get even more than 5x? That's fine. Just like on the old phones,
can you?
You can
Is that possible?
you can reverse pinch and you can go 5 times more. So on the 5x zoom, you can go up to 25. On the 3x zoom, you can go up to 15. But the problem is when you are really zoomed in, and again, this is a digital zoom, so you're going to lose a little bit of quality. But when you are super zoomed in, let's just say you're trying to read something from far away, sometimes you lose track on your screen of where you even are. It's like, what is you go back and forth, like, well, am I to the left or to the right? You're just so extremely zoomed in. And so there's a new feature that Apple added this year. It's built in automatic that anytime you go beyond 5x, 6x, 7x, all the way up, or if you have the 3x camera, I think it's the same on the regular Pro, there's a little window that appears in the bottom corner of your screen that shows what things look like just through the regular 1x camera. And there's a little yellow box that shows the part that you're zooming in on. And it makes it so easy because if you're zoomed way in and you're like, okay, I'm trying to see that sign over there, where is it? You can just look in the little mini display and you can say, oh, I see my zoom box is too far to the left. I need to move over to the right just a little bit. And then you move yourself over and it's there. It's a really cool feature. It makes a ton of sense. I think it's great that Apple has it. Frankly, I wish that Apple would bring it to some of the other models, the older models too. I don't know if maybe they think that they need the newest processor to make it work for a picture-in-picture. I don't know. But it's a really, really useful feature. And I suspect you don't know about it because I haven't seen Apple even describe it yet. In fact,
I haven't heard anybody else talk about this. Yeah.
I was trying to find out, what does Apple even call this? Like, sometimes Apple comes up with a name for something, if they have a name for this feature, I haven't even found out what the name is yet. But whatever it is, it
mini
makes,
window.
Yeah, mini window for extreme zoom, for digital zoom, and it's really, really helpful. So again, if you have one of the newest phones, once you get into the 5X or 3X, if you have the regular Pro, zoom in even more, and you'll see this window automatically pop up, and you'll see how incredibly useful it is. It makes a huge difference.
So it's only when you go past that 3x or the 5x, right? Now
Correct.
you're talking about reverse zoom, but I wonder, Jeff, sometimes what I do is if you tap and hold on the area where you can go like 1x or 2x or something like that, it comes up with like this little scroll wheel, right? So you can move your thumb up and down. Does that make sense? I wonder if that box comes up when you,
it does.
Oh, it does. Okay, great.
Yeah. So I'm doing it right now. So as I use that little
live
scroll
testing.
wheel, as soon as I go past the 5x point, the little window, actually that's funny. It doesn't come up at the 5x point. It comes up at around the 10x point when you're using the scroll wheel. But regardless, you'll get there. And again, if you don't use that little scroll wheel to zoom in, if instead you just use your
just
fingers
use the pinch,
to sort of a pinch or reverse pinch, then it does the same thing. So it's really, and when you do the reverse pinch, it comes up a little bit sooner. But it's really cool, and it makes it so much easier to find out where you are.
Oh, that's great. So that's for the iPhone 15 Pro and Pro Max. We don't think it's on the 15 normal.
I don't believe it's on the 15.
Yeah. Well, somebody let us know. Somebody write to us, leave a comment, let us know. That's great. That's a good tip, and I'm just even additionally extra jealous now that I don't have my new iPhone 15 Pro yet. I keep trying. I should have, I think I tried looking at it if I wanted to pre-order or order it now, not pre-order, but order it now. I think I'm back up to October 27th or November 1st now. So you did good, my friend. You got it. You got on the bandwagon as soon as you possibly could. Good talking with you as always, Jeff. We want to thank our sponsor again, SaneBox. You can learn more going to sanebox.com/inthenews. And we'll talk to you next week, Jeff.
Thanks, Brett. Bye-bye, everybody.